Digital archaeology, how AI brings 3,000-year-old ancestors back to life. Welcome to Deep Perspectives. I am your digital archaeology navigator, Lawrence Stardust. Have you ever wondered, how accurate are those portraits of ancient people in our textbooks? From Egyptian pharaohs to Greek philosophers, from Maya priests to Chinese emperors? The answer is, most of them are artistic imagination. For centuries, painters and sculptors, guided by limited textual descriptions, their own aesthetic preferences, and even the political needs of their time, created generation after generation of standard faces. Europeans painted Jesus with blonde hair and blue eyes. Colonial artists gave African chiefs European profiles. East Asian imperial portraits followed fixed templates of dragon appearance. These faces are less truthful than they are projections of ideology. I loved watching Indiana Jones as a child. I would wait in line for ages at Disney just to ride the attraction, and at night I dreamed of sneaking into treasure-filled caves and exploring lost worlds. But as I grew older and dug deeper, I became increasingly disappointed. How much of the history we see in classrooms, textbooks, and media is actually real? Now, modern humans finally have a chance to end this guesswork. Today, I'm taking you into a brand new field, digital archaeology. We are merging neural networks, ancient genomics, and forensic anthropology to make fragmented skulls grow muscle and skin again, and to let faces that disappeared millennia ago meet you, for the first time, as data-driven, objective truth. Are you ready? Let's press the start button of the Neural Time Machine. Station 1. The Neural Time Machine, the technological revolution of 2026. First, a fact you may have missed. Traditional facial reconstruction of ancient humans has always been an art of guessing. The old method went like this. Archaeologists unearthed a skull, then hired a forensic artist or sculptor to build clay layers on the skull based on muscle attachment points. Eye color, skin tone, lip thickness, hairstyle, all depended on the artist's experience and imagination. Different artists working on the same skull would produce completely different faces. Worse, the artist's own period aesthetic would unconsciously seep into the work. Early 20th century European reconstructions of primitive men all had Caucasian noses and chins. This situation was completely overturned in 2026. This year, an AI reconstruction technology called Deep Phenotyping achieved a breakthrough. It combines three key data sources: high-precision 3D laser scanning, capturing every millimeter of the skull; ancient genomics, reading phenotypic information such as skin color, hair color, eye color from ancient DNA; and a global soft tissue database containing tens of thousands of CT scans of modern and ancient people, establishing statistical relationships between muscle thickness and bone morphology. In the past, we could only guess. How tall was this ancient Egyptian's nose? Now the AI algorithm tells you. Based on his nasal bone angle, pear-shaped aperture shape, and maxillary morphology, compared with 2,500 individuals with similar structures in the database, his nose has an 87.3% probability of being this shape, and his skin color has a 92% probability of falling within this range. This is not, I think it looks like. This is statistical truth. Moreover, AI has successfully crossed the uncanny valley, that psychological threshold where a robotic face looks almost human but not quite, making people feel uneasy. The 2026 neural rendering technology can generate pores, fine lines, even the luster of the eyeball surface, making the reconstructed face look like a real photograph, not a wax figure. So what we are doing today is not an art exhibition, but a forensic-level identity restoration. Station 2. The Genomic Blueprint, reading your appearance password from dust. So, how does AI know a person's skin and hair color? The answer is, from ancient DNA extracted from a single bone, a tooth, or even a pinch of dust. You might ask, doesn't DNA degrade? After thousands of years, what could be left? True, ancient DNA is extremely fragmented. But over the past decade, paleogeneticists have developed a jigsaw puzzle repair technique. They assemble billions of tiny fragments, like gluing back together a torn-up book. As long as the sample is well preserved, for instance, in cold and dry caves, high-altitude glaciers, or sealed stone coffins, we can recover a sufficiently complete human genome. From these genomes, we can directly read appearance-related loci. Take one example. A gene called SLC24A5 controls melanin production in the skin. A specific mutation on this gene is almost absent in African and East Asian populations, but very frequent in Europeans, it lightens skin color. If we extract DNA from an ancient Roman skull and find that he carried this mutation, then no matter what an artist might imagine, his skin was certainly light. Conversely, without the mutation, his skin was dark. The AI does not need to guess. It directly reads the data. Similarly, eye color is determined by genes like HERC2 and OCA2, hair curliness by TSH and others. Even whether a person had freckles, could metabolize lactose, or would flush after drinking alcohol. All this information is written in the DNA. Even more fascinating, AI also incorporates craniofacial association rules. Some genes affect not only skin color, but also face shape. For example, a variant of the EDAR gene, common in East Asians and Native Americans, is associated with coarse, straight hair, flatter cheekbones, and shovel-shaped incisors. AI discovers that these traits tend to appear together. So when the algorithm reads an EDAR variant from the DNA, it automatically adjusts the cheekbone height and incisor shape in the facial reconstruction. This is not magic. This is Bayesian statistics applied to human appearance. Station 3. Sculpting flesh with algorithms, from bone to every detail of expression. With a 3D model of the skull and the skin and hair color determined by genes, the next step is putting flesh on the bones. This is precisely the weakest link of traditional methods and the strongest suit of AI. Muscle attachment points leave clear traces on bones. For example, the temporalis muscle attaches to the sides of the skull, and the masseter hangs on the mandibular angle. The size, roughness, and position of these marks directly determine the corresponding muscle thickness in that facial region. An experienced forensic anthropologist can estimate by intuition, but AI can achieve millimeter-level precision. The core technology here is the Trajan algorithm, a deep convolutional neural network dedicated to soft tissue reconstruction. Its training data comes from thousands of head CT scans of several dozen populations worldwide. Each CT records the exact distance from the skull surface to the skin surface. The algorithm learns the nonlinear relationship between skull shape. How wide are the cheekbones? How high the brow ridge? How prominent the nose bridge? And soft tissue thickness. Then, when facing a new ancient skull, AI calculates the most probable subcutaneous thickness distribution point by point. The next step is face generation. The latest breakthrough in 2026 is neural texture synthesis. Instead of simply texture mapping a 3D model, AI uses generative adversarial networks to directly render a 2D face with realistic lighting, reflections, and subsurface scattering. Subsurface scattering is the effect where light penetrates the skin, bounces in the subcutaneous fat, and then emerges, the key to making a face look alive. Previously, only the highest-end movie CGI could achieve this. Now AI has automated it. Even more astonishing, AI can even infer dynamic expressions from a static face. By analyzing the depth of the eye sockets, the orientation of zygomatic muscle attachments, and the range of motion of the temporomandibular joint, the algorithm can simulate subtle changes when a person smiles, frowns, or stares. We are no longer facing a rigid plaster bust, but an ancient person who could almost speak. Station 4. Smashing modern myths. When an ancient Egyptian appears before you. Now we use this technology to do something that rewrites history textbooks. Challenge the deeply ingrained racial appearance stereotypes. You may have seen images like this in textbooks. The Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II with a Caucasian straight nose, thin lips, and well-proportioned face. Ancient Greek statues of Athenians with noses that almost form a straight line with the forehead. Roman senators, all with the same Mediterranean curly hair and deep-set eyes. AI reconstruction tells us most of these are later Eurocentric artists' self-projections. Let's look at a real case. In 2017, scientists sequenced the complete genome of an Upper Egyptian mummy from the 1st century BCE, the first complete genome of an ancient Egyptian mummy. Then, in 2025, an AI reconstruction team used the same data to produce his face. What did they find? His skin was light brown, but much lighter than modern Egyptians. His eyes were dark, no trace of blue irises. His hair was black, slightly curly, but not tightly coiled like sub-Saharan Africans. His facial features were closer to ancient populations of the Eastern Mediterranean or the Arabian Peninsula, rather than sub-Saharan Africa or the Caucasus. In other words, ancient Egyptians were Mediterranean people, neither European nor black. They were an independent branch of Northern Africa. This result debunks both the white supremacist myth ancient Egypt was a white civilization and the simplified ancient Egypt was a black African civilization. Another even more striking example. In 2024, scientists used AI to reconstruct the long-robed man, a man who lived in London about 900 years ago. His ancestry analysis showed that he had only 33% European ancestry and 66% from Northwest Africa, Berbers. In other words, the streets of medieval London were not filled exclusively with the white British we imagine today. The AI-generated face showed a man with medium skin, black hair, and brown eyes. His appearance directly challenges the popular narrative that Britain has always been a purely white society. Before Europeans discovered the Americas, our migration maps were full of such unexpected mixtures. AI reconstruction makes these silent bones speak. History is far more mixed and far more beautiful than our fantasies of purity. Station 5. Fun stories in AI reconstruction, crossing the uncanny valley. To give you a more vivid sense of this technology, let me tell you a few true stories. Story 1. The mixed-race princess of the sacred city. In 2006, archaeologists discovered a burial on San Juan Island near Lunahuanaca, Peru. In the tomb lay a young woman, accompanied by a gold mask and ritual objects. She lived about 800 years ago and was a noble of the Chimu Kingdom. In 2025, AI reconstructed her face. The result was astonishing. Her facial features were neither typical Andean native, high cheekbones, strong jaw, nor standard European or African. Her skull measurements showed her maternal lineage came from Asia, mitochondrial haplogroup B2, but her autosomal DNA carried faint genetic signals from Polynesia, traces left by long-distance voyagers from the South Pacific. The AI-generated face had Inca eyes, but a slightly narrower nose bridge and fuller lips. When local indigenous communities saw this face, many wept. They said, "She looks like my grandmother, but not exactly. She is everyone's grandmother." Story 2. This Syrian boy from Roman London. In 2018, archaeologists unearthed the skeleton of a male about 1,800 years old near London Bridge. At the time, isotope analysis suggested he was an immigrant from the Mediterranean. In 2026, AI reconstruction and genetic testing gave a more precise answer. He was about 17 years old. His ancestors came from Syria or Jordan. His hair was black and slightly curly, his skin olive-toned, his eyes brown. Interestingly, AI not only reconstructed his face, but also, based on his skeletal age and muscle attachment marks, inferred that he had often engaged in horse riding or cart-pulling activities. The corners of his mouth were slightly upturned, as if with a faint, elusive smile. The team projected the Syrian boy's face in a London museum, where visitors could meet him through AR technology. A teenage girl from a Syrian refugee family stood before the projection and whispered, "He looks just like my little brother." At that moment, archaeology was no longer cold past, but flowing present. Story 3. Deconstructing Aristotle. The most surprising case to me was the reconstruction of a medieval monk's skeleton, one that had once been mistakenly thought to belong to the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, later proven false. Yet the process of AI reconstruction itself was a fascinating detective story. The skeleton showed a fat build, a wide face, a full forehead, and a receding chin. An artist produced a scholarly, serious face based on this skull. But AI, based on the shape of the eye sockets and the strength of the chewing muscle attachments, judged that this person was more likely to have engaged in heavy physical labor in life, rather than sitting at a desk all day. Later isotope analysis confirmed that he had consumed large amounts of grain and animal protein, but his tooth where pattern showed he often chewed coarse fibers, likely a monk who managed an estate, not a philosopher. This case reminds us, AI does not automatically produce the right answer. It makes our assumptions more falsifiable. Station 6. Toward Living History, VR, AR, and Ethical Challenges. The significance of AI facial reconstruction goes far beyond making images. It is starting a revolution in immersive historical experiences. Imagine this scenario. You put on a VR headset and walk into a meticulously reconstructed Pompeii, based on archaeological data. The streets are exactly as they were in 79 CE, with Latin graffiti on the walls translated into your language. Then you meet a person. He waves to you and greets you in the local dialect of the time. This person is a holographic figure generated by AI reconstruction, based on the skeleton of a victim excavated from Pompeii. His face, his build, his clothing, based on frescoes and carbonized fabrics, Even the shape of his mouth when he speaks, simulated from the skull structure, are all data-driven. You are not watching a documentary. You are walking among a people buried under volcanic ash for 2,000 years. This technology is expected to enter some museum trials as early as 2028. At that point, the meaning of the word history will be fundamentally rewritten. It will no longer be text on pages and static display cases, but a parallel world you can enter, interact with, and even shake hands with ancient people. But this raises a profound ethical question. Do we have the right to resurrect the dead? Imagine your ancestor, buried 3,000 years ago, is today reconstructed by a scientist using AI, his face posted online and seen by hundreds of millions. Is this respect for the dead or a violation of privacy? While legally, the dead have no personality rights, culturally and emotionally, many indigenous communities are very sensitive about this. For example, Australian Aboriginals explicitly oppose any form of DNA testing or facial reconstruction of their ancestors because they believe the spirits of the dead need to rest in peace. On the other hand, supporters argue that the dead can no longer be harmed, and AI reconstruction can give marginalized historical groups a voice. For centuries, slaves and servants in European colonial history rarely left portraits. Their faces were erased from history. AI reconstruction can fill that gap, allowing those suppressed voices to appear, silent but powerful. There is no simple answer, but at least technology has run ahead of the rules, and we must stop and discuss this properly. Final station, 3 seconds of gazing at an ancestor. After all this, I want to invite you to a thought experiment. Close your eyes and imagine you are standing in the middle of a museum. The lighting is dim, except for a spotlight illuminating a floating hologram. Above it, a line of text reads, 5,000 years ago, middle reaches of the Yellow River, China, late Yangshao culture, 40-year-old male. You slowly approach. The face appears. His skin is light brown, his forehead full, cheekbones moderate, eyes dark brown, lips slightly pursed, chin square. He wears a hemp garment, a rope tied around his waist, his hair pinned with a bone hairpin. His gaze looks into the distance, as if he has just finished a hunt or a ritual. You look at him, and he looks back at you. Then you realize, this person was born before the pyramids were built. He died before the city of Rome existed. His entire life was spent in a village by the Yellow River, planting millet, raising pigs, firing painted pottery, burying his loved ones. He never saw bronze, let alone iron. But did he have a name? Did he love? What did he fear? What did he hope for? His face is AI's calculation based on his skull and genetic data, with a confidence of 92.7%. You stare into his eyes for 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, the 5,000-year gap between you and him disappears. You are no longer reading a history. You are facing a person who once lived. His DNA may or may not share fragments with yours. But like you, he got hungry, felt cold, loved his children. This is the most powerful force of digital archaeology. It does not just display the past. It reminds us that the past never truly passed. It only turned into another form and hid inside bones. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey of digital archaeology. If you are curious about these ancient faces awakened by AI, feel free to leave a comment. With algorithms as eyes, we can see the past. With genes as bridges, we can connect ancient and modern. Like, subscribe, share. I am Lawrence Stardust. Next time, we might meet face-to-face in a VR museum.